Thank you, John. I'm really, really pleased to be here. Goodness, this is what I kind of think about, talk about all the time. So it's actually really nice to take a space to, just deliver a little seminar on it. I was being nosy when people were coming in. I was trying to see who was here. And I suppose that's one thing I wanted to start with. I'm going to talk about what kind of activist I am. But throughout my career, I'm one of those people, I have my feet in different spheres. So I'm always kind of moving and working with different people. So it's nice to see kind of a variety of people. I do recognise some people from the Therapist Connect community as well, so hello. Just echoing John, I would really encourage people to use the chat room today. So I believe in talking to people. Sometimes I talk to people that I really, really agree with, and sometimes I talk to people that I really, really disagree with. But I do believe that we need to talk to people, even if we have disagreements. Chat to each other, I may not be able to look at this chat as I'm going along. I'm probably just going to talk and talk and talk. John, if it gets to 10 p.m, make sure you stop me. And all I'd say is, just remember everyone's human beings. So just remember respect for everybody when you are doing that. I don't really use respectful communication, because that means different things to different people, and is very linked as well to maybe your background or your identity or whatever. But yeah, just remember everyone's human beings when you're doing that. So I thought it would be useful to just give a little bit of a potted history of some of the things I've done for anyone who doesn't know anything about me. So I started off really doing solitary activism. So I was online, I was completely unknown. And by the way, I was very happy not being known. So I was on social media, I was doing a lot of work, fighting injustice, fighting oppression, fighting prejudice and discrimination. And when it came to therapy specifically, there was something that I felt particularly strongly about, and that was the unpaid work situation that is so rife in our profession. It's something that you hear, it comes up, it goes away, but it is definitely a thing. And I did this kind of silent protest, if you like, which was to not become accredited with BACP. Now, that may not sound like much, but it was a very thoughtful and deliberate thing that I would not become accredited with BACP, to stand in solidarity with my colleagues who could not afford to do that. Because if you have a profession where there is a real lack of jobs, and a lot of people cannot get paid jobs, and to become accredited, you need a certain amount of hours. That's going to be meaning kind of a forcing of lots of people into working unpaid, which at the time that I was doing this, a lot of people were working unpaid for this reason. So I didn't become accredited to stand in solidarity. And I kind of thought I was like the only one who was thinking about these things. And then I became aware of a campaign group, which is much larger now. It was large, but it's much larger now, called Counsellors Together UK. And of course, Counsellors Together, or CTUK, this is what they stand for. They look to fight this problem in our profession. And it was like, oh, all these other people exist. And I was still very much in the background. I wasn't main person in that or whatever. I was just a member of the community, but I was talking to some of the people who were very much at the foreground. And I enjoyed talking about this stuff. I enjoyed writing and thinking much more about this. And so I was slowly getting more and more into kind of, community or group activism. I would just like to give a shout out to all the grassroots campaigns and activist groups that have been going for many years. You know, so much good work has got done, and solitary activists as well. That, just using an example of CTUK there, they were actually the first people to call for a paid counsellor in every school. And if you look at the BACP and NCPS, this is now a major kind of project policy. It's within their policy, but it started in a grassroots movement. So that's just to give a little bit of hope about what activism can actually do. So at the same time, I was also joining what was called the BACP, or what is called the BACP Private Practice Divisional Executive Committee. This is linked to activism. You might say, what private sector linked to activism? Well, it is. And actually, if you read the book that's coming out in the summer, you'll find out a little bit more about that. But just to say, I mean, number one, I'm just a bit of a geek, and so I knew everything about private practice. So, you know, I wanted to offer my services in that way. But secondly, and really, really importantly, I felt very strongly that all these people who couldn't get a job were then going into private practice. The last workforce survey done by BACP found out that 69.2% of people work in some capacity in private practice. This is a very high percentage, nearly 70%. It's probably even gone up since then. And so all of these people were moving into private practice because they were finding it difficult to find paid work. And yet there was a real lack of support for those people, for those therapists. And it was a trend that I was seeing. And as an activist for, I call on-the-ground therapists, I kept seeing this trend that actually nobody seemed to be thinking about just working therapists, working practitioners. And of course, this wasn't good for therapists, certainly not good for clients either. We know anecdotally that, you know, in a lot of trainings, private practice is not covered really in the way that it needs to be. Sometimes it's not covered at all, or it might be covered a little bit, but it's a really, really niche sector. And so I was looking at the membership bodies and thinking there isn't anything to support private practitioners, and I really, really wanted to make that happen. So I joined the division, and I put a proposal in, and we worked for some years actually, and the proposal was something akin to the private practice toolkit, which now exists. So the reason why I'm mentioning that is that I guess in terms of the activism that I do, this was an example of me talking to people and working with people that actually I found quite difficult at times to work with, because I disagreed with some of the policies that were coming out of BACP, and I also disagreed with some of the behaviours that were coming out of that organisation as well. But I really, really believed in this work for on the ground therapists. So it was a difficult time. I'm going to talk about what's called relational activism, and sometimes this sounds all like hippie and peace and lovely, and it kind of is, but it's also very difficult at times, because you may well be going into spaces and trying to convince people of things where they may not see it, or they may not be in that particular place, so they may not recognize. And when we talk about unpaid work, we're talking about therapists who might not be able to pay their bills, therapists who spent thousands of pounds to train, but you know, can't find work. So that was happening, and then at the same time, this project was coming out, something beginning with S, scoped, yes. I don't want to bring the party down, this was coming out at the same time, and a lot of activists, particularly on social media, were talking about this. And I'm not going to talk about scoped, but what I will say is there are parts of scoped that some people will agree with, actually. And a lot of people that I talk to, there are some parts that people might say, oh, that bit's good, or that bit's good, or I believe in regulation. Scoped isn't regulation, by the way. But what I would say is that the framework as a whole, how it was made, how it's been delivered, what's on it, all of that as a whole, in my opinion, really represents some of the systemic issues in our profession. And, you know, there is a reason that you'll see a lot of the groups that stand for minoritized cultures and things like that, and communities, are actually against scoped. So then in 2020, I became a co-lead of the Therapist Connect platform. And John covered there in the introduction a little bit of what Therapist Connect is about. I mean, it basically says it on the tin, it's connecting therapists. We have the trainee talk community as well, which is our student community. And Peter sent out an initial tweet which started the Therapist Connect community. I was setting up this project called Trainee Talk, which was kind of the same thing, but with students. So a month later, we kind of came together. And one of the really important things, or something that's very important to me, is that Peter, Dr. Peter Blundell, for anyone who doesn't know him, he's a lecturer, he's a researcher, and that's his like full-time job. And my full-time job, I do lecturing and writing and all of that, but my full-time job is actually being a private practitioner. So we are from different worlds, and yet we very much believe in these different spheres talking to each other and trying to understand each other and trying to understand each other's needs. So I've become, over that time, a lot more well-known. Like I say, I'm naturally an introvert. I actually probably would have liked to have just stayed in the background. But I did recognise that, well, I guess it was my life circumstances that pushed me forward rather than choice. And yet, I don't regret that one bit. It's probably one of the best things that could have happened to me, because as an activist, I have skills to offer. Some of those skills are talking and writing and things like that. And so actually, you know, I probably needed to be more forward facing than I was. And I had to work out what's the introvert part of me, and, you know, how can I look after that part of me, and what else is going on there. So I built my own platforms as well, and I'm very big on social media, and I talk to community a lot. I talk to therapists a lot about things, and this is part of my activism, just talking to therapists. So a lot of the things that I say, actually, they're not necessarily just coming from me. I obviously have my own opinions and stuff, but it's also because I talk to a lot of people. And yeah, I have over 20,000 followers on Twitter. Instagram's more of a newer platform for me. I have about 13,000 on there. And this is good because it allows me to reach those people through those mediums. And I do lots of different types of activist work. So I also really believe in collaborating with others. And in addition to, you know, the things that I'm involved with, an example of that at the moment, I'm collaborating a little bit with the Psychotherapy and Counselling Union. And I like to collaborate with groups that collaborate with other people. So the Psychotherapy and Counselling Union have a special relationship with Barton, the Black, African and Asian Therapy Network. If you haven't heard of them, please do check them out. So that's a little bit about me. And I thought before we return to talking about therapy and activism, it would be good to just kind of look a little bit at some famous activists to just see how were they living their activism. So not just talking about it, but actually living it. So I'm just going to try and share my screen. Okay.
Yeah, we're seeing your slides come up, Caz.
There are they? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now that won't play, John. What do I need to do?
When you click that play button, you're not getting a...
No.
No. Do you want me to show the slides from here? Oh, could be that.
Here we
Looks
are.
great. That looks great, Caz. Yes.
Okay. So I'm going way back to the 1800s. This is where we're going to start. The Rossettis. So Christina Rossetti, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, and wife Elizabeth Rossetti, Elizabeth Siddell, as she was. And I wanted to start here because actually, I mean, by the way, I've picked a bunch of people, but there are so many that I could have picked. You know, this is an example. I guess that the Rossettis, they were kind of a little bit anti-establishment. They challenged Victorian ideas. They believed in, you know, through painting, poetry, through their art, they believed in, you know, sharing truth, sharing sharing experience, sharing their feelings. So if we think about lived experience, this would be a similar kind of thing. And you know, they weren't the first artists to do it by any stretch of the imagination. But there was something really interesting about how they worked individually, but also how they worked as a group as well. Dante Gabriel Rossetti was actually influenced by William Blake, who was another kind of, you might call him a bit of a radical, really. I've put here the Goblin Market, so you might want to check that out. That's by Christina Rossetti, a poem, and it really touches on, I guess, what you might call feminism today, actually, advocating for you know, women to be independent. So a lot of the things that they were doing are really, really pushing against Victorian society. But we might think of that in everyday terms as pushing against establishment, not just for the sake of pushing against establishment, but knowing, why am I doing this and what is it that I feel strongly about? By the way, all of these, I suggest you know, because I haven't got time to go in depth, so just look them up after. Now, is there anyone who doesn't know who Maya Angelou is? I take it. I can't actually see the chat room, so I take it that's a yes. Let me just see. Can I move to move this? John, how do I get rid of the, you know, the photos of us? I just want to read this.
Can you drag them around your screen with a mouse, Caz?
Oh, I can. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Does that help?
It does help. Thank you.
Oh, good.
So the quote, just do right. I've been very purposeful with these quotes, by the way. Just do right. Right may not be expedient. It may not be profitable, but it will satisfy your soul. It brings you the kind of protection that bodyguards can't give you. So try to live your life in a way that you will not regret years of useless virtue and inertia and timidity. Take up the battle. Take it up. It's yours. This is your life. This is your world. So obviously an amazing civil rights activist, you know, writer, you know, so many important works. I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. If you haven't read it, read it. My personal favorite, Still I Rise, a poem by Maya Angelou. And that quote, I think it really It really touches on something important, both for, you know, activism that we may be doing on behalf of other people or other groups, because it's not fast. It doesn't bring you in the money, you know, maybe if you're doing it properly, maybe it doesn't. It's not about that, but it's about actually, you know, living your life in a way that is important for you, to fight the things that are important for you. And of course, also, it talks about people doing it for themselves. This is your life. This is your world. And that is quite true, actually. So when we believe that there's injustices in the world, or in the you know, micro worlds that we exist, we can actually take that and try and change it. It's so important, and it's so important when we think about activism. Okay, let me try and right. So from one amazing woman to a second amazing woman, Toni Morrison. Toni Morrison, I mean, she brought Black literature really into the mainstream. So again, she's using creativity to talk about all the things that were important to her. Yeah, this quote here. Does anyone want to, even if you want to shout out or whatever, what you think this quote means? Freeing yourself was one thing, claiming ownership of that freed self was another. What does it mean?
I've just unlocked the microphones for a moment, so if anybody wants to unmute, and yeah. Or there's responsibility in the chat room.
Okay, yep. Yeah, so kind of taking responsibility for yourself if you feel you know, that you have been freed or whatever. I would also add to that, though, that sometimes it feels like you know, a group or a person might be freed, but there's a difference between being free and feeling free. Yeah, and this is really, really important when we talk about social justice. One thing I sometimes talk about is with LGBTQ rights. Sometimes people kind of are a bit like, oh, well, you know, apart from obviously there's a lot of conversations around trans stuff, but, you know, with regards to being gay or being a lesbian or whatever, oh, everything's fine now. Everything's fine now. There's no problem. Okay. Oh, gay marriage exists. It's fine. Okay. But it's probably not fine, actually, for a lot of LGBTQ people, because they may not still feel free because of history, because of microaggressions, even because of people saying everything's absolutely fine now. So another quote that I absolutely love. I mean, there's so much that I could say about Toni Morrison. You know, I guess you just need to read up on her. But the other thing that happened was she did do quite a lot of campaigning against banning of books, because you know, a couple of her books were banned from libraries. There was a really famous example in Florida. I think it was The Bluest Eye was banned. You know, sometimes people might say, oh, there's reasons for this. So people were saying, we're complaining about this for a reason. But maybe what wasn't being confronted was the unconscious bias that was happening, that was about the fact that she was talking about and she was writing about racial issues. So let's move on. In real trouble, John, with my, oh, there it is, right.
That's stuck. We're going again. Great.
So James Baldwin, another one of my favorites. James Baldwin, he's not so well known, actually, but he again was a writer, but he did a lot for you know, minority groups. I guess he dedicated his life really to the alienation felt by minority groups, and particularly racial minority, and also within the gay community as well. So ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. Not even going to say anything more. This is a very, very important quote. Okay, and it's why the role of power is so important when we talk about social justice, or things that we may be standing up for as activists. Okay, Stella Duffy, OBE. Some people might think working class lesbian, left wing, but they find them fun to have a drink with. So I love that quote for so many reasons. And by the way, the photo of her,
Oh, Caz, you've just gone on to mute. Let's see if we can open your mic. Caz, yeah. So you're still on mute, Caz. Let's. There we go. I think we just need that last couple of sentences again. Sorry, Caz.
Yeah. Some people might think working class lesbian left wing, but they'd find I'm fun to have a drink with. So yeah, I was just saying I love this quote for so many reasons. Because first of all, it just brings out the human element. Sometimes people be like, oh my goodness, activists, like be quiet, you know, or oh, they're banging on and on again. But actually, you know, activists are human beings too, and often what they're doing, the way that they're living, is because they feel so strongly about something, and they are human beings. So you know, there's multifaceted sides to people even when they are doing this work, and actually I think that's very important for activists in terms of keeping themselves feeling grounded, you know, that they can embrace those other parts of them as well. The t-shirt that she's wearing, some people are gay, get over it. It was a campaign that Stonewall ran in the 1990s. It was very, very successful campaign. So as a famous person, she's standing there wearing the t-shirt. Now, Stella is also, not only she's written, I think, 19 books, fiction books. She's worked in theatre. She actually runs a community, a creative community that's quite similar. I run one called Therapists Create and Therapists Connect. It's quite similar, you know, how we can use activism as well in creativity. And she's also a PhD student in counselling and psychotherapy. Yeah, she's an extremely interesting person. I have the pleasure to know her as a friend. And I must say, when I chat with her, and of course her books, if you haven't read any of her books, just start from the beginning, because it's very character-based novels that really show diversity. You know, and that is part of her activism, to getting out to the world there in novels. Actually, this is how some people live, you know, cultural minorities, things like that. Yeah. And I must say, when I was on almost a burnout as an activist, she gave me probably one of the best pieces of advice that I'd ever received, which I shall keep for myself. Okay, so Benjamin Stefaniah, I'll put the dates there because bless him, he died yesterday. So sad. This is a big loss to lose Benjamin Stefaniah. He was a poet. You know, he just did so much. Read the obituaries that will be in the newspapers today. But this quote, I love it. If you didn't have troublemakers, most women wouldn't have the right to vote. A black person wouldn't be talking to a white person. I'd probably be back in slavery. We need troublemakers to challenge the establishment. Quite true. I must say, I think over the years, people who didn't know me, you know, and I'd be like, you know, like that itch that never goes away, I'd just be like there, because that's part of activism for me. You just keep going and going and going and going. I think some people just thought that Caz, she's such a nightmare, like she's just being deliberately annoying or something like that. And then actually people got to know me, and well, like our Benjamin here is, you know, it's all about the peace. He's smiley because he's doing it from his heart. He's doing it because it's something he believes in, not just to be a troublemaker, but sometimes it does appear like you are being a troublemaker. So I just wanted to go through some considerations that I've kind of come up with. Again, this isn't an exhaustive list, but things that I guess I think about. So first of all, I'm going to take the first three together. So my background, my intersectional identity, and doing the work. Okay. I think that one thing I'll say here is why is activism in the therapy world so important? And this comes under doing the work. Okay. Because how can we work with clients or go out in the world if we haven't done the work ourselves, or if we haven't got our own houses in order? Okay, and that's why I feel so passionate about activism within the therapy world, because actually it's going to have a direct influence on our ability to work with clients on things that are important, to work with clients from minority backgrounds, you know, even talking to your colleagues and understanding your colleagues, or trying to understand your colleagues, trying to empathize with people who are different to you, people who have different experiences. I'm going to have said some stuff today and some people are not going to have agreed with it. That's fine. And we may be coming from very, very different experiences, and that may well be informing that. So, you know, when we're working with clients, of course, clients will always tell us about their lives, but for us to be able to know a little bit about what the experiences of the other are, I think that's really, really important. And of course, therapists are human beings as well. That's the number one reason why it's important. So when it comes to my background and my intersectional identity, you know, if you have never talked about your intersectional identity in therapy, then I would say stop what you're doing, down your tools, go back into therapy and have a chat about it. Because many activists really stress this as one of the number one things. And actually, it's a never-ending task, because, you know, how I felt about my identity 3 years ago may not be the same as how I feel about my identity now. Or I may have discovered things about myself or discovered my own vulnerabilities. For example, you know, if I get I don't know, excluded from something, maybe I go straight in my head to, is this because of this? Because a lot of people from minority cultures do, actually. Our Dwight Turner, I don't know if he's here today. I really like Dwight Turner because, you know, he's someone who was on social media as well. He's an activist on social media, and he's obviously in lots of other places, you know, he writes and all of this. But he talks to people, he's in community, but he talks about being the other. And this is really, really important when we do community work. We're in community, but maybe also if we're from a cultural minority, we also feel like the other. So that's one reason. The other reason is so that we can know when we are oppressing people, or when we have the possibility of oppressing people. And we all do. So we need to kind of know our own background and our own identity that could have an effect on that. So the next one, love for humanity, all of humanity. Yeah, all of it, not certain groups. You know, this includes so many things, you know, all those buzzwords like inclusion and equality. You know, it's about love for humanity. Thoughtfulness into action. So this is one I feel quite strongly about. I like to think, I like to really know, why am I doing what I'm doing? So I put a lot of thought into it, and then it's into action. So it's not one or the other. It's not only thinking, or it's not only action or impulsive action or whatever. It's thoughtfulness into action. The next one, brain and heart. So for a lot of my life, I haven't got time to go into my own background, but I had a strange upbringing, a difficult upbringing. And I used to say a lot of the time, it was my brain that saved me. I would say, you know, I wouldn't be where I was without my brain. You know, I stand by that. And I did, you know, I did the traditional education. I had a master's by the time I was 23 and all of that. You know, but later down the line, I realized actually, yeah, it is my brain, but you know what? It's also my heart. It's my heart that is really, really important when it comes to this work, and recognition of that was very important for me. So I would just say to everybody, if you're doing this work, really work out, where's my brain and where's my heart, and how do these things serve me? Knowing what I stand for. Yeah, we can't all stand for everything. It's impossible. So knowing what are the main things that I stand for, and linked with that is consistency. So the reason why I went through my history as an activist was to show that actually I do have, if you look, there's a kind of thread. Wherever I am, whatever I'm doing, there is a thread, and you can kind of go, oh yeah, that's what Caz believes in. And that's really important, because sometimes if activism becomes like a bit of a project or something like that, there's like, I'm doing this over here and that's what I'm doing and it's all good, but then I'm doing this other thing over here, and actually it might contradict what's going on there, or they might not match. And that's really, really important. So finding your consistency. Oh, okay. Let me just see if I can move that. No. So I think that says, John, it says balancing responsibility and power with my own self-care. Is that what it says?
That's exactly right. Yes.
So yeah, so this is a big one. So I told you how big my social media accounts are. I'm well known. I have a lot of responsibility, actually, and I do own my own power. It's not always easy to own your own power, but I do own my own power. You know, a lot of people lean on me, I need to take, you know, I need to really hold that very, very gently. But I also have to self-care. I also have to look after myself as a person doing social media activism. I don't know whether anybody goes on Twitter X here, but it can sometimes get a bit like, whoa. And you could literally spend all day doing activism on Twitter, or standing up for someone, or standing up for someone's cause. But, you know, I'm a therapist. I have to go to work. I have to go and work with clients. And I have to look after my own mental health, and be responsible to my clients as well for that. So this kind of, okay, how do I balance? I'm not going to always be able to be there for people who want me to be there if they've got something, you know, that they want me to speak out about, or, you know, back them up or whatever. But you know what? Sometimes on social media, a small thing can make a difference. So if you like something, just like something, if you just write under a post, agree. And sometimes that can just be enough. And it was making me laugh, actually, when the posts were going out advertising this this workshop. Lots of people were writing. I was like, oh, okay, I can see how people see me, because lots of people were writing underneath their own causes and things. I could see on one of Mick Cooper's posts, someone had written underneath, you know, will people sign this? Caz has signed it. And I thought, I love that. I absolutely love that. I don't need to get involved. But I like the fact that people can see me as like a safe person, that they can then actually do that for the things that they feel passionately about. So this is a way that I self-care. You know, I do use my photography as a means of my activism as well. And you know, I do find that when I connect with such things, I have a real idea of what I believe and where I'm at and things, and this can be reflected. And I like to you know, have my photography and other art on my social media channels, It's also a part of me. This is Clapham Common. This is only like 2 days ago, I think, 2 or 3 days ago. And it does reflect where I was. I was in an extremely peaceful mood. So my art is quite important as well when it comes to my activism for different reasons. Relational activism. So this is what I've been talking about. This is how I've been describing myself. I'm a relational activist. I talk to people, and through the power of relationship, I believe things can change. Okay, and it's also going against the notions that leaders have to be a certain kind of way, that they can't be compassionate and things like that. But the relational activism say you can be compassionate, you can be also very, very dedicated and committed to what you believe in. To love is to act. It's a lovely slogan. Becca Dove and Tim Fisher, they've written papers on relational activism, and they're social workers, by the way. So we've taken it over into the therapy world, and we've talked about compassionate activism in Therapists Connect. It's very, very similar. But I guess you could go back to any of those activists. So many of those activists that we looked at from history were probably relational activists, actually. It's only one way of doing activism. It's my way, and some other people's way, maybe. But some people will do it very, very differently. So some people will be in absolute uproar that I would be talking to people that were in systems that they might think upheld oppression, and I also might think upheld oppressive, so kind of oppressive systems, if you like, to be talking to people in those systems. And I get it. I do get that. But I guess the kind of person I am, I'm hopeful. I like to believe in people, so I like to get out there and talk to people, even when it can be difficult. So just going to come out for a minute. Am I out? No.
You're still sharing. That's you. And just a 10-minute time check, as just you probably got your eye on the clock, but just letting you know.
Yes. Yeah. So just a quick one on Therapists Connect. So Therapists Connect community. I've already said a little bit about it. But I guess one thing I wanted to say, me and Peter are co-leads of that community. We are very transparent about that. Well, we're not co-leads of the community, we're co-leads of the platform. This is a really important distinction. We're co-leads of the platform, so that at the end of the day, we've got responsibility, the buck stops with us, all of that kind of thing. But no one is the lead of the community. And actually, I take part in the community all the time. So on Twitter, people will see I put Therapists Connect hashtag on things. I'm just like a community member. I like to talk to people in the community, and there is no power dynamic. There is no one in charge of the community. We do have what we call a Safer Spaces project. It's called Safer Spaces. There's a reason for that, because safety means different things to many different people. And we have a team. So if there's anything that comes up that's very, very difficult, that needs discussing, the Safer Spaces team will discuss that. It's made up of different people who can give different opinions on things. I did want to quickly give a little bit of a case study about something that happened in Therapists Connect, just to show how we try and live what we talk about. So we were going to deliver, Peter and myself were going to deliver a seminar for an organisation, and we wrote like a little blurb, and we put our very short biographies forward, and these biographies, they're very short, they're only 5 lines each, and Peter was busy, so I'd written the thing, the blurb, and sent it off, and got an email back, and the email said, I've got a word limit on the website, so I just needed to lose some words. So I've just edited a bit. Hope that's okay. So I opened it up, and I opened up the blurb, and the blurb, there was no changes. So I opened up Peter's biography, and there was no changes. And then I opened up my biography, and my biography had been edited, shortened. And I was like, what? And the line that was taken out was, Caz is a specialist in ethical and thriving private practice. So the thing that I was a specialist in was taken out of my biography. Now, it's an obvious difference between me and Peter, what sex we were born. And this was not the first thing to happen. By the way, I don't say this to shame anybody. We were transparent. We went straight back to the person. We've said, no, please put it as it was. And we went off and did the seminar, and it was all fine. But this is just to show there was an issue that was happening. And it's because, and I'm just going to say, I'm not going to be diplomatic about it, there is sexism in our profession. You know, so we knew at that point that we actually had to really address this, and we had to really keep maintaining the fact that me and Peter are equal as co-leads. So this is just a little example to show how we have had to think about, or have had to confront things over the years that have come up. So I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. So I'm just going to, couldn't do this without sharing a quote from Bell Hooks. This really reminds me of what we do at Therapies Connect, or what we try and do. Dominant culture has tried to keep us all afraid, to make us choose safety instead of risk, sameness instead of diversity, moving through that fear, finding out what connects us, reveling in our differences. This is the process that brings us closer, that gives us a world of shared values, of meaningful community. So I'm really aware of time. I do have an exercise, but everyone can just do it at home. But I do want to go through this: barriers to recognizing potential abuse of power. Okay, so this is really important when you're an activist or a community lead. So number one, not recognizing difference and the existence of oppression and oppressive systems. Okay, and sometimes we can theoretically, like, oh yeah, I know that happens, but not recognizing them, not seeing them. Oh, there it is. Let me look, let me listen to people who are saying this is an oppressive system, rather than, oh, I don't think it is. Let me listen to the person first. Okay, secondly, ego. I didn't want to, you know, it's therapy, I didn't want to use the word ego, but ego rewards and prizes. Sometimes it's easier to stand up for things when, you know, we don't get impacted by it. So, oh, you know, I'm going to stand up. I saw something racist and I'm going to stand up against it, you know, I get from my colleague or whatever. But sometimes we might not do it. And the reason we might not do it is because we might lose out if we do it. So I'm not going to say much more than that, but really, really think about that. Rewards and prizes, and what might be going on in, you know, in the unconscious when we choose to stand up or when we don't, or even when we act in a way that might actually be oppressive. Too much theory comes back to the point I made earlier. Do read all the books. Go and read all those people that I shared. Read, you know, Dwight Turner and Myra Khan, and do all the reading that you need to. It's really, really important. But you know what? Don't make it all theory. Don't make it so theory that then when you're in front of a person, you actually forget that there's a person with a lived experience. If you, so another barrier could be if you're lacking awareness and openness to many different forms of diversity. So sometimes we might stand up for certain causes and forget about other causes. But, you know, it's really important, I think, if we are in these roles, that we can be very aware and open to lots of minority cultures, for example, or lots of examples of oppression. So avoid a deep reflection on what inclusion in practice looks like. So this is just a little bit like, you know, that EDI. Some people hate that. Oh, I can't stand EDI. I personally don't, because I like words, and I think words, you know, they describe things, right? But you're going to talk about inclusion, or if you're going to talk about equality, talk about it like equality needs to happen. Talk about it like that. Don't talk about it like EDI, tick box. The next one is fragility, comes from white fragility, but we can all be fragile. All of us can be fragile. It goes a bit into the next one, but I'm a good person. What are they saying? Why are they shouting at me? But actually, sometimes activists do shout, and they need to. And sometimes we need to go, why are they shouting? What is it they're so angry about? But I'm a good person can also be us activists, right? Oh, but I'm doing the right thing. I've got the right intentions, all of that kind of thing. But we all can oppress. All of us have that capability. The other thing, blocks where there is conflict or disagreement. This can be a real one in community, because often when there's conflict or disagreement, we go straight back into our positions. Okay, and it can be much harder to be open and to work through that. And I saw there was one in a TASC recently. So I'd really urge everyone to really think about that. What happens when there's conflict or disagreement in community, and where does the role of power come into that? So we're gonna end in time, John. I believe it. 1 minute, but I am going to set this for homework, if you like. So the homework it's 2 parts. For you to write up to 3 things, which is basically an honest reflection about your own identity, the individual powers or privileges that you hold, or the vulnerabilities. Well, not all, and the vulnerabilities that you hold. So up to 3 power things that you hold, and up to 3 vulnerabilities that you hold. And the second part of the exercise is more important, which is when you've done that, then when you're in work on Monday, you actually think about it. So if you've got, you know, straight female in a very high up role on your power list, you then think, well, you know, actually, how are people feeling around me? You know, when I occupy those spaces, you know, what happens to my power? Do people see me as oppressive? Just these kind of open questions. So there's a very important second part of that exercise. Ends with the great Desmond Tutu. If you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. It's the hard road. But the great Desmond Tutu said it best, winner of the Nobel Peace Prize, of course. So as we end, I just want everyone, if it feels safe enough, I want everyone to close their eyes and just listen to something that I wrote. It's just a little bit of prose. I was walking down the road. I was like thinking about this workshop, and this all came up, and I made a note on my phone. And when I read it back later, I was thinking, where do I put this stuff? And then I was like, actually, this kind of says a lot of it. So this is from the heart of an activist. Just listen. The hope I hang on to is that one day we will be able to collectively and properly address the deep issues with power and privilege in our entire profession. That we will look closely and be real about the systemic culture that has been created and cemented over the years. We need to listen to others and include others, and not just for novelty purposes, but as an ongoing practice. Sometimes that means adopting a grace that means admitting that we don't know as much about something else as someone else. This is what community work is all about, the power of people. The minute it becomes corporate or packaged, it risks losing actual meaning. And if you're an activist or community leader and you're talking with people with power more than you're talking with your community, that's a sign to stop and examine yourself carefully and thoughtfully. Talking with, not to. Please, let's never forget as therapists the amazing gift we all know, that of active listening. May we also never forget as our fellow human beings in all their vulnerability, and may we never assume we know a person's identity or struggles without actually asking them. May we challenge where it's needed with all the conviction we have, whilst also respecting another's humanity. Embodying activism for me means simply striving with love, empathy, and understanding to have a true impact on the world, one that is decent, meaningful, and caring. Thank you.